What's up, Red Door crew? Here we are back with another informative series. Actually, we're doing something a little bit newer. If you're in tune with our market reports, you probably are already aware of this. We got a new streaming platform here that we're trying out. We're just trying to improve the overall visual experience for our viewers. Let us know if that's working or not. My name is Chris Knight, Business Development Manager here with Red Door Property Management, joined by Mike Taylor, broker owner of Red Door Property Manager. Mike, what a pleasure it is to be joined with you yet again.
Yes.
And before we get into, let me kind of outline what it is we're trying to achieve here. So we kind of, like I mentioned, starting something new. And this month we are creating what we are calling the Landlord Series 101. So essentially, we are going to lay out a path of what it looks like for you to get into the investor world, the real estate investment world, and what we think is going to set you up for success from step 1 all the way through step 10 in this case, right? We're going to have 10 kind of informative little clips here. And our intention here is to only kind of stay on each one for maybe 5. I don't know. We may get excited if you've watched any of our videos. That happens to me sometimes, and I'll get excited about a topic. And we'll stick around a little bit longer. But that's kind of our goal here is to shoot an entire class of what it's going to look like for you to kind of get into this world and have any attempt at being successful. Mike, anything you want to add to that?
No, just kind of a bit of a masterclass, like you said, going over each topic, not in super great depth. We will do longer form videos on some of these topics that maybe warrant a bit of a deep dive. I'm thinking like maybe how to screen a tenant. We may not be able to get into every single thing on that. That's a pretty complex topic, but again, this is the 101 series. So this is, like you said, to take it from, hey, I've got a new investment property, or I'm moving out of my property. What do I need to do from start to finish to get this thing on the market and rented and successfully up and running as a rental property?
Yeah, exactly. And as we start to create some of these and the platforms that we're using, we're going to be able to kind of incorporate and integrate some other screenshots, maybe some articles that we're referring to. So look forward to that as we continue expanding some of what we're doing here, some of this podcast style informative videos that we're shooting for our viewers. So.
Yep.
Before I forget, be sure, like, subscribe. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on a lot of this riveting content. So like and subscribe. If you would even be so kind, be sure to share it. Share it on your platform. We would be super appreciative of that. So like, subscribe, comment. Be sure to comment on how informative this is. Does it suck? Do you hate my shirt? Do you think I need to take the hat off? What is it? I want to hear some of these comments, stupid or otherwise. Please share us your thoughts. So if you're ready, Mike, let's jump into class number 1, in my opinion. And we may need to adjust this as we kind of go along, as we kind of discover what is the 1, 2, 3 chronological order of this process. But once you've acquired a property and you need to start preparing it for market, right? So you need to know you've closed on the property. The next step, in my opinion, is going to be your walkthrough assessment. Now, Red Door, as if you're already a client of ours, you already know that this is super important to us, and we complete what we call is a market readiness assessment. So it's a thorough walkthrough of not only the major mechanicals, and this has been developed over, and I hope, Mike, I'm not going to steal all your talking points here. Then maybe this is kind of the advantage of me going first. I got all the good stuff.
You won't stop talking.
Yeah, I know I won't stop talking. I can't give you a breath here. But we complete a market readiness assessment, a thorough walkthrough of your property, not just the major mechanicals, but the overall condition of the property, the walls, the floor, and provide recommendations. And I'll stop it right there, although I got more to say. Mike, how important is a walkthrough assessment on a property?
It's so vitally important. And I think what is maybe difficult for a individual homeowners to walk through with fresh eyes. And so, because a lot of times we get people who maybe they're moving out of this home, and so they used to live there. That happens, to us quite a bit. But you need to kind of go in with fresh eyes. And it's not like, hey, I lived here. I've lived with this for the last 5 years or 10 years. So, for example, we had somebody who I think it was a dishwasher or something like that. He had like vice grips on there, and that's how he started his dishwasher. Well, you can't do that as a rental home, right? So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. You need to go through with fresh eyes, not like, hey, this is my property I lived in for the last 5 years or whatever it is. Fresh eyes from a marketing point of view. What does this take to get this property up and running, marketed as a rental property and as a business, basically?
Exactly. What a great way to finish, because a lot of our individual landlords, these are properties that they had lived in, right? And so maybe they have an emotional attachment to the, I don't know, the carpet or the wall color. Well, fresh eyes. I couldn't have said it better. That's hugely important here. You need someone who's going to view this now because as what it is. This is now a business for you. This is an investment property designed to return a profit in most cases. I mean, that's what most owners are expecting to accomplish. So you need someone to look through it with those lenses, and that is going to examine your property. And not only that, if you're an individual landlord new to the investment space, you're probably not going to know all the little things. What's one of the little things you would think that a homeowner might miss examining before renting a property out? I would probably say maybe, I mean, furnace filters are huge, right? I mean, maybe the importance of having clean furnace filters and when they should be provided. I mean, it's kind of part of that market readiness assessment that we do. But what's one thing that you might think is often missed?
I was going to say either screens or blinds. Seems kind of small, but when you're a renter and you get in there and you don't have a way to have privacy, it becomes a big deal. So that's kind of one of the things for us is you've got to have window coverings, and that seems like a small thing, and maybe you wouldn't notice it if you were just walking through a home, or if you just closed on the house and you're like, oh, this place looks great. Well, hey, you got to have blinds. You got to have some sort of window covering.
Excellent point, and I agree. That's often looked over by a homeowner. I mean, when you're placing a tenant. I'm glad you touched on that one because this is very important for owners to understand. The tenant isn't expecting to provide window coverings for 20 windows, 15, 20 windows in your home that they may live in for a year. And it's not a major expense either. And also it can really improve the visual experience when a tenant's walking through the property, which is even more important for having it set up. Here I am. See, I mean, where this is going to extend. This is even more important, right? You want to have your best foot forward. You want to have the best product available. Having window coverings, faux blinds, that is what I would suggest for most properties. Not only does the tenant not expect to have to provide window coverings for your entire home that they may only live in for a month, but it's a much better visual experience, much better walkthrough experience for achieving a great quality tenant, which is what you're trying to achieve here, right?
The other thing too on that, Chris, and this goes beyond really just the walkthrough, but that's something that if the average homeowner may miss, the average renter may miss too when they're doing a walkthrough of the home, only to find out after they move in. And then now you've got like a first impression of an angry tenant asking for or arguing for window treatments, because like you said, they may live there for a year. They're not going to want to put window treatments on your home. So this is, again, setting yourself up for success for a happy tenant, because we both know happy tenants are better tenants. They're better paying. They stay longer. So this is kind of bleeds into the move in and having a good first experience. If you go in there, you didn't notice it when you walk through, it's like, oh, geez, I don't have any window coverings on my master bedroom. Now that's a problem.
And we've only touched on window coverings, right? I mean, if
we could go for hours.
Yes, we could keep going, and I'm going to try and keep us on task here, but but I have to, when you make these points, I have to speak to them. And you're absolutely right. We're trying to set off the best first impression with not only securing the tenant, but you're right. They may miss it. The tenant may miss it also. And they move in and it's like, oh, wait, I don't have any blinds. And I can't stress it enough. Setting that relationship off great from the get-go is good for all parties involved, even more so for the owner, because in my experience, a happy tenant interaction within the first 30 days of them moving in absolutely correlates and translates into them submitting frivolous maintenance requests along their entire stay. So spending what, $200, $300 to install blinds, and we've only touched on blinds because it's easily missed, is so important for saving you money in the long-term relationship with this tenant. So that's it. I'm cutting this. I'm sending it to all owners. They all have to know this. We're only in class 1. All right. Okay. All right. So I think we've covered it. A market readiness assessment is absolutely essential when you're acquiring a property or when you're moving out of your property. You need to have someone with fresh eyes. Just closing the loop here, with fresh eyes, it's going to examine the property and provide you a list, which is exactly what we do. Provide you a list. We'll go over the list. We don't have to accomplish everything on our suggested list, although that list has been generated because, based on our experience, it's what sets off the best tenancy relationship between landlord and tenant, which directly reflects in your ROI. So there you go. Class 1 walkthrough assessment is essential. All right, we're going into class number 2 now. Now, next in this process, after you've completed a market readiness assessment, you're going to be jumping into, well, now that I've established my list, who's going to do the work? Hiring professionals. Again, extremely important, and how I guess I'm going to start off these classes is that I'm going to kind of suggest what Red Door does, right? I mean, we only work with certified professionals, properly insured professionals. And Mike, I'm sure you've got a lot to say about that because you have a lot to do with the vetting and the requirements for the vendors that we work with. But it's extremely important to have people that are certified and insured. The last thing you want, this should go without saying, but maybe it doesn't. The last thing you want is to hire Tom down the street to install some new wiring and the place bursts in flames, right? That's really not a funny thing because it could happen, and I've seen it happen. And what a liability you've now created for yourself, only because you thought you were saving a little bit of money. I'm here to tell you, you're not. You're not. So you've completed your market readiness assessment. You've got this task list. You've got to knock out. You've got to hire professionals. Mike, what do you think?
I mean, for me, this is two-pronged. One, you mentioned it is, you hire, I call them chuck in a truck, and probably don't have the correct insurance. For me as a business owner, I'm always concerned about correct insurance. And you now, as a new business owner of putting your property into a rental home, you are now a business owner. You need to think about this as a business, and you need to make sure that the people that you hire to do work on your property are properly insured. Because like you said, if they burn it down, if they fall off the roof, that liability is now on you for sure. So that is number one. Number two is timeliness. And, a lot of people think, oh, I can save a couple bucks by hiring that chuck in a truck. Well, the reality is that most people don't do work at the pace that we do. And so they may not have, that reliable guy. I mean, there are good guys out there who do, good work for who, maybe on the side or whatever. But the reality is that you're probably guessing whether or not that contractor is going to A, do good work, and be timely about that work. Too often, I mean, we see this all the time where an owner takes on their own repairs and it takes them months and months to get the work done because the contractor's unreliable, late, takes so much longer. I mean, it's like it should be a 2-week project. It ends up being a 2-month project. And if you take all of the lost rent that you could have done because fill that vacancy 2 months faster, you're like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? It's just, it just doesn't make sense. So for me, that's what it's about. It's about liability and timeliness, and then quality of work. It's also a gamble of the quality of the work that you're going to get. Might be good, might not be good. We've seen it all.
Timeliness. Yes. So that's the one I'm gonna choose to kind of speak a little bit more on, because exactly. I mean, right. I'm kind of the first point of contact with new owner acquisitions, and timeliness. That's one of the things that I try to stress as the importance of hiring a professional, is getting the work done within a timely manner. I have a list of owners right now that we've recently acquired, and it's trying to convince them. I understand you want to maybe even do some of the work yourself, and you think it's saving you some money, but you're sitting there for 30 days longer, maybe sometimes even 60 days longer, hoping you're saving yourself a little bit of money. And in reality, the reality of it is you're not. And the quality of work, right? It speaks to that. And there's warranties associated with the people that we hire to complete the work, right? Let's be sure to mention that. So the timeliness, that's huge for me. I'm always eager to place a tenant as soon as possible, as a lot of the homeowners are, and a lot of the delay, and even they don't realize it. That's where a lot of that early delay lies, is them trying to save a few bucks because they want to do it themselves or hire
I think
somebody
that's
else.
where we see the biggest delay is when owners try to do it themselves and it just takes forever. They got another job, they got kids, they got a life. They fit this in on the nights and the weekends, and it's like, gosh, this is costing you so much money. Just sitting there not getting that done quickly. I don't know. It
And there's
just
resources available. I want to make sure that we mention how this kind of correlates with Red Door. I mean, although this is designed not necessarily to draw you to Red Door, which will take you. Don't get me wrong, but it also just kind of educates you if you're
yeah.
not using a reliable property management company. And I don't want to lose sight of that. But I mean, when you're working with Red Door, we have all of those relationships ready to go, and we can complete the work in a timely manner. And that's why it's important to work with an experienced property management company. So yeah, there it is. Hiring professionals. Huge.
Yep. Huge, huge, huge.
Okay. All right. That's going to wrap out class 2 on our Landlording 101 series. Now, let's jump into class number 3, which is marketing the home. So Landlording 101, class 3, marketing the home. Now, this is a little bit different because what we do as a property management company, you have a platform, and there's other sources out there. At least there used to be. When we were a little bit fresh in this, we would use a company or a website rather called Postlets. And if you're an individual landlord, this is something you can kind of look into. But Postlets, it was a resource that you could just simply post your marketing information to, and it would distribute it out to the masses. Well, our systems now do this for us. So we have this beautiful outline when marketing the property, and I can't wait to talk about something that we've newly integrated, which is our virtual walkthroughs. But I want to stay on task here a little bit, which is just getting your property out there to the proper platforms. What's necessary to once I've completed the work, I've hired the professionals, all the work is done, and I'm ready to market the property. And what we do is we input it into our systems, and of course, our system will distribute that property throughout, and it's blasted nearly everywhere. Zillow, Hot Pads, rental ads, apartments.com, even it's all over the place. So if you're not using an experienced property management company, a source like Postlets or something like that, but in my experience, you should be using a property management company. Let's not lose sight. Mike, what do you think? You're ready to market the property. What's important?
Yeah, I think maybe just backing up a second before you're ready to use Postlets or shotgun it out there to all the websites that we do is talking about photographs. You have to get professional photography done on your home. Yes, you could take photos with your iPhone. Yes, iPhones have amazing cameras on them, but I am telling you there is a difference when you hire a professional to take professional photos of your home. That is, sometimes the only chance that you have to get your home rented is somebody clicking through a site like Zillow or Trulia or Hot Pads. They're clicking on you, click, 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 super fast. If your pictures look like junk, you're never going to rent your home, or it's going to be crazy high days on the market. So I cannot stress the importance enough of having professional, high quality, high resolution photos done for you. Don't do it yourself. Don't save the whatever it is, 150, 200 bucks, whatever it is. Hire a professional. We do it on all of ours. Cannot stress that enough to get professional photographs, because then it doesn't matter if you put it on Postlets or whatever, have a flying banner. It doesn't matter. It's going to look ugly,
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and I'm glad you backed it up a little bit. Professional photos, and now it's a wide opening for me to also mention what we have recently started, which is, and I wish, as we improve on this platform, I'm going to have that stuff ready to go. I'm going to show you an example of it. It's going to be awesome. But in the interim, the virtual walkthroughs that were now completed, and I can't wait to speak to their success, but I know based on my experience that they are going to be successful in renting and placing tenants quicker. But the virtual walkthroughs are awesome. So professional photos, a virtual walkthrough to hopefully produce an application before they've actually even viewed the property in person, right? So I mean that opportunity is there. Now, a couple notes that I had, and I want to see your thoughts. A couple things. Number one, what do you think about yard signs, right? I mean, are yard signs a thing of the past? I know that, of course, us as a property management company, I don't know that I see the value in yard signs anymore. It's a little bit of a hassle to put them in the yard, and everything's tech-based, right? I mean, we're in the AI time. I mean, who's driving by and seeing a yard sign? What do you think?
I think their usefulness is gone. I think, honestly, if anything, it's more of a liability. It's more of a sign to, hey, this home is vacant. Come steal my appliances. We've had, depending on the area, we've had some instances of that. But I mean, the odds of you finding a renter through a yard sign are so small, it does not warrant the risk of putting a sign in there. So I would say nah to yard.
Yeah, I would have to agree exactly for primarily the liability standpoint, right? It's like I'm empty. Come take my wiring. And then just to keep this moving along, my other question, concern, thoughts that I had on marketing the home is who you're using to market the home. Now, it's so often we will take on a property. So they've acquired a property, they've used a real estate agent, which I highly encourage, right? Use somebody who's familiar with the market as well as the investment world. That's important. And now that realtor is suggesting that they have the ability to place a tenant. Now, where I've personally seen this kind of fall apart is once they've placed a tenant, that realtor didn't have the systems in place to properly qualify the tenant, or if you've listened to any of our videos, in my opinion, the most important part of when you're placing a tenant, and I'm sure we're going to get to this, is when you're placing a tenant, is documenting the condition of the property, which a realtor is just not going to do. And their access to the legal documents that are necessary, a lease agreement, properly attorney written lease agreement. We all know that the lease agreement that, and I don't mean to talk, and I don't want to talk bad about our peers in the industry because they're great, but the tools are highly important when you're placing a tenant, qualifying your tenant properly, using the proper lease agreement that's going to come in handy during the tenancy. What do you think? Should I use a realtor to lease my property?
I mean, I think probably a good analogy is hiring a handyman to replace a hot water heater versus hiring a plumber. Yeah. So you hire the specialist. You know what I mean? That's what I would do. I mean, the handyman may be able to do it. He probably can't, but guess what? The plumber's got that truck in your driveway. He's got every part on there. He's got $10,000 worth of parts on his truck. He's been doing this for 10 years. He makes it look easy. But the reality is he is specialized in this. And so I think that's probably the best analogy is, yeah, they can do it. Some are probably better than others, just like handyman, right? Some are better than others, but fits me. I'm going to hire the specialist.
Good. Great analogy. I'm glad we covered that. And to me, I think that wraps up our marketing of the home, right? I mean, we've prepped the property. We're ready for market. We've discussed at least the important pillars. And it's also important to mention that there's always going to be more points of interest with all of these classes. We are just highlighting in an effort of saving time and quick reference, but there's always going to be more items that you should be looking into when covering some of these classes. I mean, wouldn't you agree, Mike? I mean, we're not going to be able to cover everything here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's going to wrap up. That's Marketing the Home, Class 3, Landlording 101. All right, now let's jump into the next step in the process, at least how we've designed it. Landlording 101, qualifying applicants. Now, this is huge. I'm sure we could go for days and days on qualifying, whether it's the systems that you're using or what you're going to use as a checklist. I mean, this is something that we work on all the time, right? It has to be improved as technology improves. Scammers are extremely prevalent, and I can't stress that enough. They are out there. They are ready to take advantage of you. And if you don't have the systems in place to properly vet as simple as a driver's license, which are fake all the time,
yep.
Then you've got to hire somebody who does have those systems in place. But qualifying applications, Mike, let's go.
I mean, boy, this is, again, as I mentioned kind of in the intro, I think that we could probably do its own video just on this. So we'll try to keep it as informative as we can without going too deep. But you mentioned it. I think nowadays, and it's really more prevalent in the last year or two than I've ever seen, but fake applications, fake scammers, fake IDs, fake pay stubs. I mean, you can get all this online. I mean, people advertise this is a business where they will provide you with a job history, pay stubs, fake IDs. I mean, they're so good that you can look like you're holding it like this, like you're actually holding it. And it looks really good. They're really hard to detect. So I would say that probably the number one thing is having systems in place to be able to detect fake IDs and fake scammers is probably number one for us. I know that we invest a lot in technology, time, money, effort to weeding these guys out because they're good and they're getting better day by day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many different areas when you're qualifying an application, and it's hard to pick which pillars that we should talk about here today
Yeah.
in this quick informative class here. But I mean, aside from just the credit, let's just cover a couple. So a couple items of interest that you should for sure be looking at when you're qualifying an application is, of course, right? It goes without saying, their credit.
Of course.
You've got to be able to pull their credits. You've got to see what it looks like, and you can base it on your own comfort level on what that looks like for you and what minimum credit score that you want to achieve to place a tenant. But you got to be pulling their credit, their employment history. I mean, you have to make sure that you can verify their income to confirm that they can afford the property that they're renting, right? I mean, our standard is certainly no less than 3 times the monthly rent to be able to qualify for a property, but you've got to be able to verify their employment in ways that we do that. Just to mention, again, I want to try to keep from going down these rabbit holes, but ways that we do that is by obtaining pay stubs, bank statements. Mike, any others that immediately come to mind that you want to be sure to mention?
Yeah, and I'm not sure that this would be available to your average homeowner, but again, kind of going back to the specialist theme, one of the advantages that we have of being a property management company is that part of our application process is that we ask our applicants to provide a bank, and it links directly to their bank account. And what that does is it verifies everything that they tell us on their application. So it verifies, do they make what they say they make? And do they pay their rent? How much is their rent? And do they pay it on time? And so, a lot of that stuff used to have to be really, really manual. Like you're talking about the pay stubs and the bank statements. And we do still have to do that. But when we can utilize that bank feed, oh my gosh, A, it's so much faster. B, it's so much more reliable than potentially those bank statements or whatever it is, a scammer may do or whatever it is. But the direct bank feed is a huge win for us. It makes life so much better, so much easier. It makes qualifying these applicants a lot more reliable.
Absolutely. It gives you a look into their daily spending habits, which, gosh, I mean, what more could you want when you're placing someone in one of your largest assets? So yeah, exactly. All right, keep things moving along here. A criminal background check. I mean, I feel like these things go without saying, but I mean, maybe they don't. I mean, I've been in this business a very long time. As you can see, it's aging me, and I mean, maybe these things aren't as transparent as I think they should be. But you've got to be pulling their criminal background check. So pull it up. If they've got felonies, they might be a bit risky.
Sex offender? Don't forget about sex offender. Make sure they're not a sex offender.
You're absolutely right. I had it on my list. I thought that was kind of incorporated into their criminal background, but you're right. And again, I mean, we laugh. It's not really. It's really not that funny, right? You need to know if you've got a sex offender that's applied. If people take this serious, how happy do you think your neighbors are going to be once they find out? Or how close is your property to a school? Are you breaking the law? So yeah, you're right. You're right. It's important to mention. A couple more left here that I just want to make sure that people are in tune with. Verifying identification documents are legit. Now, we just quickly mentioned that, but you would be shocked to know how many applications we get with false, scammer, fake identification. It's a driver's license that's been designed on a computer and it's been photoshopped, where literally we will require an applicant to take a photo of themselves holding the driver's license, and they have even gone as far as photoshopping in their fake driver's license into their fingers. And our applications team has had to become somewhat of forensic scientists in identifying what a scamming driver's license looks like. So you've got to be able to identify that. And a driver's license is one of the first things that you're obtaining when I hope that you're obtaining when you're receiving an application. And this, I got to mention this because it's a huge part, and I know we're going over time here in this particular class, but how about, well, I'll tell you what, let's go previous eviction. They've got a previous eviction. I personally would avoid. Yes, that's an instant denial. Enough said there. And we've gone over the owner screening the bank accounts. Now, the last thing I want to mention on this approving your applicant is, what if they've got a pet? This is such a gray area and such a hot topic because of emotional support animals. Right? I mean, so you don't allow pets, but you have an applicant. They have a pet, but it's a certified ESA. They claim it's a certified ESA, emotional support animal. What do you write? What's the law require? Mike, I'll let you chime in here, and then we'll go to the next class. But it's required by law. You have to allow an emotional support animal in your property, assuming that it is an emotional support animal. We have an awesome screening platform that we happen to use, which does all the vetting process that's required in that and stays up to date on the legal requirements when it comes to an ESA animal. So we have access to that. Excuse me. We have access to that. Benefits of working with a qualified, great property management company. Mike, anything you want to add on pet screening?
Just man, what a pain in the butt. This is a real thorn in our side. It is another example of I think some applicants trying to take advantage of the situation where it's gotten a little out of control in terms of what we have to allow, what we don't have to allow. But it's the law, and so we have to abide by it, and so do you. If this is Landlord 101, that's what you've got to do. So I probably check this because who knows when you're watching this, but to my knowledge, you have to allow an ESA. The pet has to have proper documentation that it is a support animal, and then the person applying has to have proper documentation from a doctor. And I think in Indiana, you can request that it has to be from a doctor in the state of Indiana, saying that they require a support animal. Now, that stuff is super easy to get online, so somebody can get that. But again, it's so dynamic that we've partnered with a third party that does this for us. They stay on top of it all day, every day. We make them register with them, and they ask them for all of the supporting documentation, all the vet records, all of that good stuff. So I would just say we could do a whole 30-minute video on this. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but make sure you do it. Make sure you do it right, because there are some legal ramifications if you deny somebody because they have a pet and they are an ESA.
That's right. That's right. Know the legalities. That's for sure. All right. To me, that's going to wrap up the class on approving your applicants. Again, very important. There are other pillars that you're going to want to be paying attention to, but these are what we consider at least the most important pillars when you're qualifying your applicant. So that is going to wrap up approving your applicant. Now, let's see. We are 1, 2, 3, 4. We are at class 5. This is Landlording 101 with Red Door Property Management. We're getting into class 5 now, which after you've approved your applicant, these are all step-by-step, chronological. If you've missed any of the previous videos or you're not watching the full length, you want to go back and check out those previous videos so that you can stay in tune at least step-by-step. I mean, this is awesome. We're making this crazy easy for you. But now, once you've approved your applicant, where are we at? We've got to execute a lease agreement. Now, again, the design here of shooting these videos is try to keep these at a relatively, viewable length, I guess. And we could go all day with what you need to include in your lease agreement. But Red Door Property Management, what we have is an attorney-written lease agreement that is scrutinized every year and is updated on nearly a yearly basis as we find that the legalities change, right? Or that we find ourselves in a situation where we need to make sure that it's properly notated to protect, well, not only the owner, but also protect the tenant's interests as well. But and it's an extensive written lease. I don't know how many pages we're up to. Maybe I should know that, Mike, but I mean, I
think it's like 13 or 14, maybe.
Yeah, it's extensive with addendums and all the necessary information and how the security deposit is going to be deducted. So where do you want to start with a lease agreement?
Well, I mean, I think the basics, right? This is a 101. So it's what amazes me is when we take on a tenant occupied property, right? We have to, they have tenants' rights. And so we have to take on that lease as well. And so we get a copy of every lease that we bring on with a tenant occupied property. And it's crazy to see the variation in these leases and how some of them are so lacking. We joke, ours is, I just looked it up. It's 15 pages. Ours is 15 pages. It's funny. I mean, we get some that are 1 page. I mean, how can you possibly cover what you need to cover in 1 page?
A $200,000 asset, and I'm securing it with a 1-page lease agreement.
Yeah, right. So I think maybe we'll just start with the basics. Of course, you got to have your name as the landlord, and whether that is, you got to make sure that's either you or if you have it in an LLC, you got to just make sure you have the right person / entity in there. The person who is on the deed, that's who you need to have there. Okay. Obviously, you need to have the tenants' names, all of the tenants' names. If you have 3 or 4 different tenants, they all need to be on there. The address of the place. You need to include any furniture or fixtures in there. So this would be all your appliances. This is just a quick note on this. If you put anything in there like that, then you are responsible as the landlord to fix it. So if the refrigerator is included in there as an inducement to lease this place, then you are responsible to fix that. So if the refrigerator's in the lease,
good point.
Then you need to plan on maintaining the term of the lease. Is it a year? Is it a 15 month? Is it month to month? Is it a 4 month? the start date, the end date, the rent amount. Of course, that's probably not missed by most people, but you'd be surprised. We have well, I'll get into that when we get maybe a little bit more advanced. But what else? The security deposit amount and how you're going to return that to them. You're going to want to put if there's a due date, if there's any late charges on there. What else is going to be 101? You're going to need to list all of the occupants in the home. So if you have 2 adults and 2 children, the 2 adults are going to be the ones as the tenants, but then you need to have occupants as well. So those would be non-signing people on the lease as well.
Yeah. And excuse me, I'll interrupt here just for a second. And these aren't the basics, right? And these are things that you're probably even going to find on your 1-page lease agreement. It'll stop at that. That's the unfortunate part. So the point that I think I would stress the most is that if this is a document that you're going to need to potentially enforce in the court of law by an attorney, then you probably need to have an attorney write this. You need, at the bare minimum, review it, right? You're going to potentially need to defend this in court. So have an attorney review at the bare minimum, if not write you a quality lease agreement that's going to protect you in many areas. The areas that might kind of outlined are the bare essentials that you're going to need to include in your lease agreement. There's going to be many other areas. And in fact, we'll probably shoot another video and just go over the items that we kind of include in our lease agreement, the areas that you might not necessarily think of that are necessary to include in your lease agreement. For example, renter's insurance. You absolutely need to require renter's insurance. You should have this clause in there that it is required in your lease agreement so that if you find out that they don't have renter's insurance, you have a leg to stand on and you can enforce it. Smoking. Is smoking allowed in your property? You absolutely need to have this written into your lease agreement so that if you find out at some point that the tenant's smoking in your property, which is extremely damaging to your property, that you can enforce it and possibly even evict if necessary if you find that your tenant is just completely uncooperative. So, I mean, there are several. That's just a couple that I kind of had. Another one that I find there's a lot of mistakes on when we're especially, you know what, this is actually the scary part. Even when we're taking on properties from another property management company, one area where they almost always screw up, and Red Door doesn't, by the way, where a lot of management companies screw up is who's responsible for the utilities in the property.
Utility. I was going to say utilities. Yep.
Yes, my God, it happens all the time. And to be honest with you, I'm sitting here thinking, because I'm so shocked by it, is I can't recall a time where we brought on a property that's transferring from another property management company where a tenant's responsible for the utilities, that it was actually outlined in the lease. In fact, it said in the lease that the owner was responsible for. I mean, it's just so anyway, utilities, you've got to have it clearly identified who's going to be responsible for the utilities. And of course, lead-based paint disclosures, absolutely essential. If your property was built before 1978, it's required by law to include that in your lease agreement. Again, it's often missed. You're breaking the law. You need to make sure that it's covered in your lease agreement. So aside from that, it's just clearly identify the duties of what you expect from the tenant. And then we're gonna quickly get into the next class here, which is probably one of my favorite. But that's what I got. That's what I've got for you. Attorney written lease agreement. I can't express it enough. If you're taking anything away from this short class,
state specific attorney lease. So I mean specifically for the state of Indiana, because there are differences for each state. So I would say yes. And one last thing, and I'll leave it at that. But there is a speaking of state specific, there is a lease put out by the Indiana Association of Realtors. You can get it through, if you use a regular agent or a realtor. But that is, I think it's 2 pages. I would say do not use that one. That one is not the best lease I have ever seen in my life. So stay away from that one. Get a state-specific attorney written.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we could go on and on. This is designed to be a short little lesson for you to take the main pillars away from. And I think that concludes our class here, Landlording 101, on executing the lease agreement as part of your leasing property or investment strategy here. So executing the lease agreement. There we go. All right. Next, we're going to move into, and then we can talk about if you want to continue going on here or not. But let's get into, I really like this one. This is going to be, where are we at here? Of course, you've joined us here for Landlording 101, the series on leasing. Once you've acquired a property, we are now at class 6. So Getting into class 6, we are talking about after you've executed a lease agreement. What's next? Well, hopefully your tenant is now at the step they plan on moving in. What's all necessary? What would we suggest when you are about to move in a tenant? Now, if you've watched any of our videos, and I know I've shot at least 2 videos on documenting your property, and my goodness, I can't stress that enough. You've got to properly document the condition of the property, and you need to do it thoroughly. So what we at Red Door do, of course, we go through it with a fine-tooth comb. We take photos of virtually every inch of the property. And in addition to that, and that includes everything from the condition of the furnace filter to how many keys are left on property, at the property. We'll open the kitchen drawers and we'll see how clean they are. Make sure that they're in a move-in condition. Clearly photographing the condition of the carpet, right? That can be destroyed throughout the tenancy, and you might have to go after the tenant or secure the security deposit, and you need to be able to prove that, right? Move-in condition versus move out. And so it's documenting the condition of the entire property, and then having the tenant sign this at move-in, agreeing that it is the current condition of the property. Not only does Red Door secure photos, but of course we also do a video walkthrough of the property just to get a quick moving pace condition of the property. So we definitely check all those boxes, and we have developed what that move-in inspection is designed to capture, and we've developed it, and we change it all the time. We continue to make it more in depth. Mike, moving condition.
Yeah. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head with documentation. That is the number one thing that you need to do. Tons of photos, tons of videos, document the condition of the walls, document the flooring condition. One thing extra is to make sure you have the tenant sign off on that. So it's one thing to have the documentation. It is even better if you have them signing off and agreeing to, hey, we're delivering this home to you in this condition on this day. Here's your signature. I mean, you bring that to court, and that is ironclad when a judge is looking at, your before pictures and your after pictures when you guys are arguing about what you're going to charge the security deposit for. If you have a tenant signature on an inspection, you can say, hey, on April 5th, it looked like this. On next year later, it looked like this. That's why I'm charging you for it. I mean, golden.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that's the reality of it, right? I mean, luckily here at Red Door, we have to go through this less than your average as far as taking a tenant to court to secure damages based on how a tenant had left a property when they moved out. Luckily that we don't have to do that too often, but occasionally it's a reality of the business, and we do. And I can't tell you, I've attended hearing after hearing and where we're presenting the move-in condition, which is very clearly documented, versus the move-out condition. And I've spent a lot of time here. I mean, there's more to moving in than just documenting the condition of the property, but I can't undervalue the importance of properly documenting the property. So I'll leave it at that. It's extremely important, and having the tenant sign it, of course, is also extremely important.
Yep.
But other things that I think are important, right? You need to have the right number of keys to hand off. So hopefully you don't just have one key in your hand and you're here tenant, here you go. But most properties these days have a garage door associated with it. Here at Red Door, we insist on securing 4 keys when a property is brought on. 2 of those go to the tenant, assuming that there's more than one living in the property, but nonetheless, 2 will end up in the tenant's hands, and 2 will be retained by the management company for access later. And then also, and this again is where a lot of owners feel like, well, there's only one garage door. I think providing one garage door opener is sufficient. The reason, when we provide 2, we highly suggest that you also provide 2 garage door openers to your tenant, as because over time and experience, it almost always is requested later that they have a second garage door opener for a spouse or whatever, a partner, whatever it is, a friend that they happen to live with, or maybe it's mom and dad. But having 2 garage door openers provided at move-in and having them ready to go, right? Having everything ready to go when the tenant moves in is also important for that tenancy relationship.
This goes really back to video 1 that we did forever ago, right? With the walkthrough and looking at it with fresh eyes and making sure that you're prepping your home for success. This is it. So 2 garage door openers on site, ready for the move-in day. That goes back to that. And also on that, having, like you said, 4 keys, but all of the locks matching. It's so annoying as a tenant to come through and they have, oh, hey, here's your one key for the garage door, and then here's your other key for the front door, and here's your other key for the back door, and here's one for the shed. And go ahead and keep all those strips. I mean, it's too often we get owners who are reluctant to invest in that to get them all on the same lock, because it's about the resident experience, and that's just one more thing that you're gonna annoy them over. And it's like, oh, hey, here's 5 keys and you only get one opener. It's like, it's annoying. And you know, we don't like to spend people's money without
spending my own.
What's that?
It's better than spending my own. Sorry.
That's a good point. No, but there's a reason. We want the resident to have a good experience, which again leads to happier residents. They treat the home better, they stay longer, all of that kind of stuff. So part of the move-in, really the most important part of the move-in, is documentation. The other part is resident experience, and 2 of those that are big are the garage door openers and the keys. 2 other things that or one other thing I would mention would be, as you're taking them through the house, you're kind of inviting them into the home, you know, giving them occupancy of the home. One thing you want to do is show them anything that's specific to the home, but one thing that is for every home is to show them where any shutoff valves may be. So let's say by chance there's a flood or some sort of running water or something like that. You want them to be able to know where and how to shut off that water. It will save them headache. It will save you money. So just show them around, but specifically show them where the water shutoff is, because that can do a lot of damage very, very quickly. And if they know where that is, boy, it can save you a ton of money.
So glad you mentioned that, because I've got 2 other points that I want to make here, and we can move on from the move-in. But yes, show the water shutoff valve. Absolutely. Again, you know, you start to think that these are no-brainers when you've been in the business for so long, but they're not necessarily no-brainers. So showing the water shutoff valve. And what I would also absolutely make sure that you're showing them, probably the breaker box too, for a safety concern, but is the furnace filter, right? Yeah. Show them exactly how to change your furnace filter. I guarantee, and I don't know what the numbers or the data will show on, but I guarantee you your chances of getting them to change their furnace filter go up dramatically if you've literally shown them how to do it, right? Because people are lazy in most cases. They just are. And if they don't, they're not going to go looking for it. Even if they have a furnace filter that shows up on their front door, which Red Door will make sure happens, they're more likely rather to change it if they know how to do so already. So show them how to change their furnace filter. And then the last thing that I want to make sure I mention here is in which you should have probably included this once you've executed the lease agreement. Include a copy of the HOA covenants. It's very important that they have this in hand. It should be included in part of your lease, and we should have mentioned that in the previous class here. But I would also, even if I did include it, I would provide it here at move-in. Also, here's a copy of the HOA covenants. Make sure you're not leaving the trash can out there, and I'm getting notified of a violation because you left the trash can out there, right? They need to understand the bare necessities that are required by the HOA covenants, and absolute bare minimum, they need to be provided a copy of the HOA covenants at some point, and this is a great time to provide it.
For sure, yeah. And we probably need to move on, but just on the HOA docs, they need to know if they can buy a trampoline, for example. Some HOAs don't allow you to have a trampoline, or a basketball hoop in the front yard. I mean, there's a million things, but they need it as a resource to know what they can and cannot do, because in our lease, going back to the other video, we hold them responsible to maintain the HOA guidelines, and if they don't, you know, they are issued a lease violation. And so in order to be able to maintain those HOA standards, they have to know what they are. And so you need to provide them with the HOA doc.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, talk about including in your lease agreement. Can I have a trampoline? The liability that comes with that, my goodness.
Yeah, we don't allow it. We don't allow it.
No. The liability associated with that is crazy. All right. That's going to wrap up our class on moving your tenant in. Congratulations. If you've made it this far, you have secured a lot of valuable information, a lot more valuable information to come. So stay tuned for that. But you've made it to moving your tenant in. And if you followed any of these guidelines, you've done a heck of a job. Exactly. You've done a great job. So congratulations. You've done the absolute the absolute essentials to secure one of your highest valued assets. So congratulations. And that's going to wrap up our class on moving in. Next up is going to be our routine inspections.